Hey, good morning, Metropolis. It's now 5 after the hour of 6 a.m. in the big monster city.
Come on! Let's get pumped!
I'm not drinking any fucking Merlot! What can I say? The camera loves me.
Shall we begin?
After you, Junior.
You ask one guy from Milwaukee to make you a new intro for 87 episodes, and still we're here. I'm still using the normal log dit. You know what? I'm going to keep my anger down below. I'm still on my honeymoon phase. Hello, audience. I am Payson Redshaw, and this is Tweeted It. Thank you for coming to a wonderful week. Joining me is my wonderful panel. I have Melbourne over here to my right.
Hello.
And I, of course, have the amazing Scott, Hot Scarvy down below me. How are you doing, Hot?
Always a pleasure.
Oh, that's great. All right, so, yes, on today, thank you, everyone, for coming to this glorious episode of Tweeted It, where we get to discuss the greatest form of film discussion, that being Twitter. Nothing bad ever happens on film Twitter. Nothing disgusting, nothing gross, no, violent outrage. Film Twitter is truly the best. So, how are you guys feeling? Are you guys ready to jump in?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. As the auteur scholar here, I've gone through the depths of the truly educated side of Twitter, and I'm ready to present that to everyone today.
Of course.
Yeah, as you said, all of the opinions on Twitter very reasonable. It's where I certainly go to find the most intelligent and well thought out film discourse. So I foresee no controversy, and just a general intellectually stimulating time tonight discussing film Twitter.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you more, Hot. So we are today going to be talking about what is the best tweet you saw today or recently. Melbourne, would you like to start off our conversation?
Absolutely. I think film Twitter's lines can get sort of blurred, so I'm presenting a meme actually today. As we all know, the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer came out yesterday, and I saw a really well thought out piece of discussion where when you see Dr. Octopus rising out above the bridge and he greets our titular Spider-Man, it's actually the character of Joe from Family Guy saying, "Hello, Peter." Very, very thoughtful, very funny, but also very deep the more you think about it.
Yeah, that is really hilarious. I've been seeing a lot of memes surfacing around the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. I think memes are quite possibly the greatest form of comedic invention since the pratfall. And
number one movies, number two memes. Art is just right there.
Number two, yeah. Honestly, I think they're starting.
And number three, TikToks.
Oh, absolutely.
You are speaking my language. I love TikToks, but at the end of the day, hashtag tweet in the streets. But yeah, I absolutely love these memes. Memes are just hilarious. The Shakespearean levels of nuance I see with some of them, and yeah, like you said, "Hello, Peter." Seth MacFarlane is one of the greatest minds of our generation. Everything he touches turns to gold, and combining that with the MCU is just pure poetry. Hot. What did you think of this meme?
That's a good one. I also saw one that I quite enjoyed of I always forget what her name is, but the Russian girl who was his neighbor in Spider-Man 2 was Peter's neighbor in Spider-Man 2, and instead of Doc Ock, it's her, and she's just saying "Hello, Peter." Ursula, yeah.
Ursula, yes.
Her reappearance, I think, is the one that we're all clamoring for in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Absolutely. Peter's landlord is one I'm personally very, very excited for as well.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door is just truly Shakespearean tragedy.
What was the baked good that she made him some kind of baked good? I think
cookies.
That was a
brownies
lovely
even.
moment.
Mm-hmm.
Cookies. Yeah.
Who knows? We
got the fandom players in the chat just rattling off these details that they've just plugged into their brains.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for helping run this great contribution to Multiplex. Hot. coming in with them hot takes. What was the greatest thing you saw on film Twitter this week?
Yeah, well, obviously, a lot of people are talking about the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. That's kind of been the consuming film Twitter. And so I saw a take, which I quite enjoy, given my perspective on Spider-Man, from one Jamel Bowie, who is a columnist with the New York Times, is on Letterboxd. A very intellectual mind, again, the type you always see on film Twitter. And he said that I will just read his tweet verbatim. Anyway, big problem with these MCU Spider-Man movies is, in my humble opinion, they found a great Peter Parker in the form of Tom Holland and then refused to give him a traditional street-level Spider-Man story to play around in. I kind of agree with this. I'm a fan of the first two Raimi films above all Spider-Man movies. And while I do enjoy the MCU Spider-Man movies, I do think there is something to be said for the fact that they are very calculated. They are about this larger universe. The very first movie was about Peter trying to join the Avengers. Last time we had all of this sort of high sci-fi stuff with the elementals and all of that. And I do kind of miss the sort of self-contained, carefree storytelling of Peter Parker trying to avenge his uncle, or trying to battle with this doctor who was his mentor in some way. And so I do kind of wish the MCU would get back to that, but I doubt we'll ever see that.
Understandable. Yes, I think I honestly do agree with you, Hot. Some of my issues with the MCU Spider-Man has been they never let Spider-Man take the center stage. You kind of started to see that at the end of Far From Home, but that's really after you are still dealing with the death of Steve Rogers, as happened in the current multiverse, just plaguing him. So yeah, but I definitely agree with that very scholarly take that you have just taken, Hot. So thank you.
Yeah. I think Spider-Man, especially the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, would be a character who's actually really fitting for what Disney's doing through Disney Plus. And I understand your issues with the cosmic threats or world-ending threats more than the neighborhood ones. I don't entirely agree, but I understand. I do agree, however, with Mr. Redshaw here about. I do think that taking away his agency and not having him really be like his own character in movies and always serving someone else or serving someone else's legacy is taking away from the impact a little bit. That being said, I'm still very much excited for this film, even though I would love for him to just be slinging around, getting pizza, and doing other things New Yorkers do. I think rats are there.
Yes,
Giant rats.
Yeah, giant rats, giant mice, if you will. Mice, rat, prison, jail. Who knows? Anyway, my favorite tweet, just like these two wonderful, great scholars of film that parade the depths of film Twitter, is also dealing with Spider-Man No Way Home, and it comes from one Alicia Grauso, and she says, "It will never stop blowing my mind that people will still get mad about 2-minute Marvel trailers because they still believe everything will unfold exactly how the trailer is cut." Now, I think we can all agree that 99% of film Twitter is very calm and very collective, but you do occasionally see people getting a little out of control and yelling their opinions, and sometimes won't accept the answer. I think this take really gets down to saying how just because you see a trailer does not mean that's exactly how the movie is going to be going. It could mislead you. Hopefully not in a false way, but if it does go in a false way, everyone will always react very, very positively. But I definitely agree with this take. How do you guys feel?
The Marvel machine will always keep rolling. I never understood the whole issue of things changing. I'm also someone who believes that at least it's different between audiences. We don't need trailers anymore. We need a poster. We need to know who's in the movie and just go watch it, because trailers are now made to spoil the movie for a lot of people, because they say, if you don't know what's happening, why are you going to go see it? I'm really happy with what we saw yesterday. I was really excited. I stayed up until the second it dropped. But at the end of the day, it's not needed, and people complaining about the excess they're getting is bad. Don't take it in then. Don't support the system if you don't like what's happening with it.
Understandable.
Yeah, I kind of think, and somebody else was pointing this out too, but I kind of think Marvel has done a good job generally with their trailers and not giving too much away, because I think they know how sensitive people are to that nowadays. But somebody else was making a point about the Infinity War trailer being like, oh, so you think this trailer gave everything away, and then like showing some screen caps from the Infinity War trailer where obviously it's just everybody gallivanting around and fighting, and no indicators of how that movie actually ends up. So there's still a lot of question marks, I think, after this trailer about what's going on in the movie. I think they've done a good job, as they usually do, of like showing you just enough to get you even more excited. Again, everyone was already going to see this anyway, so in that respect, maybe the trailer is kind of irrelevant, but maybe making you a little bit more excited, confirming at least one character we know that is coming in the multiverse. But also, still leaving a lot of unanswered questions out there about what else we're going to see. What is the role going to be of all these other characters? So, yeah, it's all right. I understand why people enjoy them.
Absolutely. Yes, both of my two panels are showing a lot of BBE today, big brain energy, as we make these takes. Adelaide coming in with quite a hot take that we might see more of throughout the show. But now we are going to move on to your least favorite thing you saw on Film Twitter today. Hot Scarvy, we are going to be starting with you this time.
Well, I'll continue the Spider-Man discussion for just a little bit longer, because in addition to the trailer discourse, it seemed like in the build-up to the trailer, a lot of people were just kind of reflecting on Spider-Man movies in general and where we're at. And I saw quite a few people who are very strenuous defenders of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films, including multiple people who entered my mentions. Random people, not people who followed me, people entered my mentions when I tweeted out that, no, we should not be doing this. Sometimes, and I feel like this goes on film Twitter a lot of times, where like people are trying to, and again, intellectuals to be sure, but they are always trying to turn everything into a cult classic and reevaluate all of these old movies and say, oh, actually, this thing that everyone hated from 2003 or whatever, Treasure Planet, how everyone thought that was just a massive failure. No, it's actually the best movie ever. And now they're doing this with the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. And you know what, guys? Sometimes I'm with you. When we're reevaluating M. Night Shyamalan and saying, yeah, he's actually made some really good movies, I'm with you. When we're, doing something like this, sometimes movies are just not good. And that's how I feel about the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. I don't think they need to be reevaluated. I think they were correctly evaluated when they came out. I think I think Andrew Garfield gave a weird sort of bad boy emo take on Spider-Man that didn't really have the sincerity of the Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland portrayals. And the movies are just kind of confusing and or very cheesy and silly, like with Electro in the second movie. So, yeah, don't need to reevaluate these. And people who are out here saying he's like the best Spider-Man or something, cool down.
Yes, the position that Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man is one that I started to see a little bit more start to rise like a couple of years ago, and it's starting to reemerge now with this trailer. I personally really enjoyed that first one. I think it was a cool, sort of darker take on Spider-Man. I really enjoyed it. That second one is, as the children call it, quite a big pile of poo-poo, if you will. Try to do way too much. Electro is maybe one of the worst comic book villains I have ever seen in my life. This is Film Twitter. We got to talk in hyperbole. So yeah, I'm willing to say it's. I would even go so far as to say it's one of the worst sins that humanity has ever created. And I do agree with you, Scott, that many movies are often reevaluated. And sometimes I'm like, does that really deserve reevaluation? And you will not see any reevaluating of any less than praised movies that may have released in the past. That will not be happening from me.
No, of course. The reason we're all here is because we have the correct opinions and have never been wrong about any of our film takes. So.
Yes.
However, I am going to bring a controversial opinion to the table today, one of my rare ones. I actually respectfully disagree with you, Mr. Retshaw. While, yes, the villains of most of the films are all pretty bad, Garfield is honestly one of the better Spider-Man we could have gotten. I really enjoy many aspects of his performance. the biggest criticism I've seen given to him is, oh, he's too good looking to be Spider-Man, which is a weird hill to die on. Overall, though, I understand why people don't like the film. I think people praising it as maybe like, as one, the kid Kaleb Koho would say, top 100 best movies ever made. I don't agree with, but I understand why people enjoy it. I think they try to defend movies from their childhood to have positive opinions that they can get praise from other people. But I think overall, they're fine pieces of schlock.
Schlock, I enjoy that. Yes, Kaleb Koho is always an interesting character, and we do wish him well on any of his endeavors.
Yeah, I realized I came for Koho like multiple times there in what I was saying, first by mentioning Treasure Planet and then by mentioning the Amazing Spider-Man, but it wasn't intentional.
That's understandable. I think I will be going next on the worst take I saw on Twitter today. I will not be giving a name because film Twitter is always a positive thing. No one really likes to come for anyone's throat, so I'm not going to be saying who said this on Tweeted It. But someone tweeted out, and I just saw it. It came across my mentions, and it said, "Can we ban watching films from before the 70s? Okay, thank you." This is clearly a take where someone is. I'm not quite sure if the person who said this really believes it. In fact, I'm just gonna show you I can't really show you, but
You're gonna dox them.
Yeah, no, let's not dox them because that would never ever happen on Twitter. But I just always find these classic era is bad takes are always very annoying because yes, are there bad films there? Sure. Have some not aged very well? Sure. But there are so many great films that I think you are drying yourself of and depleting yourself of if you just make blanket statements like that. And I think we should avoid those. So that is personally the one that annoyed me the most. Melbourne, what do you think?
I couldn't imagine living in a world where we just weren't allowed to rewatch classics from like Fritz Lang, F.W. Murnau, even Jean-Luc Godard. There's so much rich brilliance there to just forget about. I will never understand people. I don't even prefer modern films. I think classic is the way to go. Most of the time, anything made after 1979 is, for the most part, useless. So sticking to classic films, I fully stand by.
Of course, the great films of Sergei Eisenstein as well, Battleship Potemkin and the like.
Michelangelo Antonioni, I actually had a marathon of his films a couple weeks ago, just pure Fazoli.
Got the Criterion box set, of course.
Oh, of course, yes.
But, yeah, no, this is a terrible take. I think that there's a certain feeling, I think, that only a really good classic movie can give you. Like when I'm watching like On the Waterfront or Casablanca, something like that, there's just like a, liveliness or something about like a good classic film that you can only feel that way when you're watching a classic film. My best friend, he hasn't seen a lot of classic films, and he's recently watched a couple. He went to in theaters to see The Apartment a couple of weeks ago, and his like reaction was to say, this is the type of movie you feel like you could watch forever. And I'm like, that's exactly it. That's how I feel, like I said, when I'm watching something like On the Waterfront or Casablanca. So I feel sorry for this person. I really do. I pity them because they're not able to experience the poetic cinema that is pre-1970s films.
Hot Scarvy doing his job by making me as sweaty as I can be. Melbourne, we will go to you for what is the worst take you saw on film Twitter this week.
This is a pretty just short, standard one.
Yes.
Grace Randolph is a human that we all know by name, mostly through Nightmares. On her being used as promotion for Shang-Chi, bad decision. I don't think that Marvel or Disney, to a larger extent, understands the online community very well. And this is a case of supporting someone who is toxic and, again, biased towards the modern film age. I think getting a getting like a Richard Roper, I'm forgetting his name, my apologies if you
Roper.
To review one of these films and not someone who was born and bred through their intense love for anything superhero.
Yeah, I have a general problem with this whole school of thought too. Like if you look at the first reactions from any MCU film, the people like Grace Randolph who are allowed to go to like these very first preview screenings of the film, their reactions are always universally positive. You can almost like Mad Libs the tweets that they are going to write after they go see these movies for the first time. It's like combining this and this thing, like these two really strange sounding things that probably didn't actually influence the film. This is one of the best in the MCU. People are going to freak out about this. People are going to lose their minds for this movie. And it's all very cynical because we know they're really saying this because they like going to the premieres and they want to get invited back the next time there's a big MCU premiere. And the way to do that is to chill for the company. And when the movies actually come out, that's when, to Melbourne's point, you get people like Richard Roper and actual serious critics who are actually, analyzing the film on a critical level and saying, well, actually, some of the initial takes might have been just a tad overblown. Again, we know that doesn't really happen on film Twitter, but in small subsets, maybe.
Yes, Grace Randolph is never a name that I quite enjoy seeing. She's always sort of has a reputation. Unfortunately, it's well-deserved of giving bad takes towards mainly the most popular of movies. One could call her a shill, just like Mr. Hot Scarby said. I don't like to throw that word around as often because I think it can be a little overused, but I think in the terms of Grace Randolph, I do think it is personally very well deserved. But thank you, Melbourne, for introducing us to that take, and I would like to say that take does in fact suck. So now we're going to be moving on to the next topic of Tweeted It, and that will be, what are you most excited to tweet about today that will hopefully get you a lot of reactions? And I will be starting this one off, if you guys would not mind. We were talking earlier about how there was really nothing made after the year of 1979 that was really worth analyzing or discussing. I disagree. I think maybe the greatest movie of all time, yes, I'm willing to say all time, is the Twitter favorite Alita Battle Angel, if you guys have seen it. And I am very excited to write Alita Battle Angel should have been the James Cameron produced film that should be getting 5 sequels, but you all aren't ready to have that conversation. Alita Battle Angel, perfect film, if you will, phenomenal dialogue, phenomenal character development, has the right amount of world building. Yes, and I'm very excited to see how the world will react when I tweet this. As we all know, the Alita Army is a very respectable, very welcoming group of fans that will always understand any take, and I'm very happy to put this out into the environment. Melbourne, we'll go to you. What do you think about that take?
I don't entirely agree. I think it adheres to modern cinema sensibilities, but it sort of drags it down. But I think there are a lot of parts of Alita Battle Angel to respect. I think anime is a great art form that was adapted decently well by Rodriguez and Cameron. And I would also like to see more of those films. And yes, Avatar is one of the true scourges of modern blockbuster entertainment. So anything decrying its quality, I fully support.
Yes. And Hot, what do you think?
I just find it surprising that you all are not just chomping at the bit for Avatar 4, The Quest for Awa. I just think that, a movie with a title like that, I mean, that just instantly grabs you. But as for Alita Battle Angel, yes, you said it, Mr. Redshaw, that when I think of James Cameron, I think incredible dialogue, just like you said. And that was certainly something that was on display in Alita Battle Angel. So I would support you in tweeting this. However, I would check to make sure that no one has ever tweeted those exact words before, because it does smack of some familiarity, I would say.
Yeah, that is fair. And in relation to Avatar 4, I actually do have an A1 tattoo that I am planning on getting on my left pectoral muscle. So we will see when that movie comes out. Melbourne, let's go to you. What tweet are you most excited to write?
I am slowly educating myself on 90s culture because I feel like I'm a little bit behind on that. So I am watching the seminal classic suggested to me by JR, friend of ours, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. So far, not a huge fan of it. However, I wrote it down here because it is true entertainment. Ivan Ooze, the villain of the film, gave a really incredible line that I wanted to check in context. Oh, the things I've missed. The Black Plague, the Spanish Inquisition, the Brady Bunch reunion. I think those are just really deep words. Speaks to really the true tragedies of all of our times, and missing those is a really big miss for truly heinous people within the universe. And I think that a lot of classic movie villains could also be saying it, if you think about it.
Yes, I see. Hot, do you have anything you would like to say?
I mean, what more can you say to a line like that? Again, just like James Cameron, incredible dialogue. I will have to check out this seminal classic myself because I also have not partaken of its particular charms.
Yes, I cannot say that I have actually seen Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie myself. When it comes to team mascots like that, I much prefer the aforementioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if you will, driving inspiration from the great Italian Renaissance artists of the past, as you all know. But in relation to the Brady Bunch, I find it very funny that we are all in squares like the intro. So if we would just like to take like 10 seconds to... That was beautiful. Thank you, guys. Hot, what are you most excited to write about today?
Well, I won't say today. I will get ahead of myself again. Something else that we do on Twitter, and not that I would ever make up my mind about a film before I saw it, because again,
no one on
not
Twitter.
something that happens on Twitter. But I am looking forward to tweeting about the film Candyman after I go to see it in theaters this weekend. I'm quite excited for this remake. I quite enjoy the original film. And I am hopeful, I am optimistic, again, not making up my mind, I'm optimistic that I will be able to tweet that my top 3 films of 2021 so far are made by Black filmmakers after I go and see Candyman, because I already have Summer of Soul and Judas and the Black Messiah at the top of my list. So that would be a very cool thing to be able to say. But even if I don't enjoy it quite that much, I am looking forward to it being what looks like a very original remake that takes the mythology of the original, but also expands on it and has some subtext that sort of brings it into the contemporary age, much in the way that the producer of the film, Jordan Peele, has been able to do with his horror films that he's made thus far.
Yes, absolutely. Candyman, I'm very interested in that trailer. When I watched that, I saw a surprising lack of chocolate rivers and fizzy lifting drinks and little orange men singing songs. But then I was informed this was actually a horror movie. So I'm quite interested in seeing this movie, and I think that would be very cool because just like you, I really enjoyed the films Summer of Soul and Judas and the Black Messiah. Melbourne, what is your take on this take, if you will?
I think Nia DaCosta is a filmmaker who's really showing promise in her early years. If she could direct maybe something like the original Candyman, I think it'd be a little bit more exciting for me personally. But I think she has a lot to offer, and I'm curious if she will follow her roots and develop a truly interesting film like the original.
Understandable, yes. Thank you all for sharing what you saw on Twitter this week. Next, we are going to be moving on to the list segment of this, and I will be passing this over to my panelist co-host, Melbourne, and just to let us explain what we will be doing with the list portion this week.
So there's a big trend going on Twitter right now that involves people talking about the first films they saw from major directors. And we wanted to start a conversation going with not only us, but also our viewers. So while I would have loved to talk about people like Jean Cocteau or Eric von Stroheim today, we decided to go a little bit more populist. Each of us will be going through the first time we experienced films from Richard Linklater, Quentin Tarantino, the Coen brothers, Martin Scorsese, Wes Anderson, and Edgar Wright. And through that, we can hopefully have a lively discussion about where our journeys in film started, and also extend it out to you guys. So after the show, you can @, us or Multiplex at the channel itself and start a discussion about these wonderful films, or maybe your first films you saw from these directors.
Yes, thank you, Melbourne. So who's the first filmmaker we have on that list?
Richard Linklater.
Richard Linklater. Yes. So I'm going to go to our resident Linklater fan here. At least his multiverse counterpart is. Hot Scarvy, what was the first Richard Linklater film you watched?
All right, all right, all right. It was not Dazed and Confused.
Oh.
Wow, you really had that ready. That's hilarious. No, the first Richard Linklater film that I ever saw was perhaps his most ambitious and perhaps his most successful film to date, 2014's A Boyhood. Um, this was a film that I saw in theaters twice when it was released in 2014. During my senior year of high school in 2012, I really got into coming of age movies after watching a film I think somebody here enjoys called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. That really sort of was my gateway into the genre of coming of age films. And it happened to be just around that time I read about the film that Richard Linklater was making. Over 12 years, the ultimate coming of age movie, if you will, where we are literally watching the main character come of age, and was instantly fascinated with it. Got a ticket as soon as I could when the movie was released. Ended up seeing it twice. It's still one of my favorite films of all time. I think it's a beautiful movie, and I think it is contextualizes so much of Linklater's work, which is about time in a lot of ways. That is such a prominent theme in a lot of his most famous films. It also has sort of the plotlessness of his best works, in my opinion, where it just kind of coasts through from scene to scene, and really focuses on these little moments more so than the big sort of milestones and achievements that you would expect to see in a coming of age film. And so I think it was a great first film to watch from a director who has now become my favorite because it does, again, contextualize so much of his work. It is such a personal film for him. And I think it's one that remains a masterpiece, even if everyone doesn't see it as such.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your first experience with Linklater. Hi, Melbourne, what do you think of Boyhood?
I think that the outcry against it is a little bit strange. It's a film that really speaks to classic coming of age films in every way of just someone moving through life and adapting to everything around them. People reducing it down to a gimmick, I think, misunderstands the depth of all the characters in the film. It's not his best film by far. It was actually one of my earlier ones. It was the first one I saw of his in a theater. And I believe actually today the only one. But honestly, I'm glad you started here. It was a really good place to start. I didn't. But this is a really nice place to sort of start your journey with him.
Yes, I shamefully did not see this one in theaters, but when it was nominated for Best Picture, I made sure to watch it at home as soon as I could because 2014 was the first year that I made it a point to watch all the Best Picture nominees, and I absolutely loved this film. I've always described it as the smallest epic you'll ever watch, where it takes place over a long stretch of time, but at the same time, it's not like a scoping like story. It is very contained about just watching this family grow, and specifically the character of Mason grow. I do understand the complaints that some people have of how the kid that plays Mason didn't really turn out to be maybe the best actor as time goes on. But honestly, it didn't really ruin the experience for me. I really, really loved this film.
Yeah, makes it more authentic, in my opinion. We don't all turn out to be good actors. Who knew?
Melbourne, tell me the next filmmaker that is on our list.
Next one is Quentin Tarantino.
Yes, then we will be staying with Mr. Hot Scarby. And why don't you tell us, what was your first experience with Mr. Quick Trip Torta? I mean, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, interesting. We're gonna talk about a director here who never gets brought up on film Twitter ever. I don't think I've ever seen a conversation about Quentin Tarantino on film Twitter. So allow me to be the first to speak about him in this environment.
Who is he exactly?
Yeah, Quentin Jerome Tarantino. He's actually from my home state of Tennessee, actually just up the road from me in Knoxville. Maybe that's why I enjoy his film so much. But like many others, I believe that my first Tarantino film and that my gateway into his films was maybe the film that is the most revered and most iconic, Pulp Fiction. From 1994. Again, this is a movie that sort of changed movies when it was released. So many directors tried to imitate its style and style of dialogue that Tarantino was able to patent after just a couple of movies in the years to come, and are still attempting it. We're still seeing the influence of Tarantino's films today. I actually had an interesting experience with the movie in that I was not allowed to watch a lot of movies as when I was younger by my parents. Obviously, I would not have been allowed to see the uncut version of Pulp Fiction when I was, I don't know, 11 or 12 when I first watched this. Actually, I was probably a little bit older. I was probably 14 or 15, but I did happen to catch it on AMC, and watching the cable version and watching the uncut version a couple of years later, needless to say, it's a very different experience. However, even in watching the cable version, I was able to tell that there's really nothing else like this movie. There's really been nothing else like it since. Even in Tarantino's films, I think he's evolved as a filmmaker over the years in exciting ways and mature ways. I think it speaks to the brilliance of the film that even when you have all of the 250 plus F words censored out of it, you could still sense how great the dialogue is, how larger than life the characterizations are, how ingenious the storytelling and structure of the film is, and just again, what a breath of fresh air it feels like. So it's still one of my favorites, and again, I think it was a great way to get introduced to Tarantino's films, as I think it is for many people.
Absolutely. Melbourne, your opinions on Pulp Fiction?
This is also my first, and as a person who has no hot takes whatsoever, I actually agree with Scott. I think it's arguably his finest work. It's up there with *Inglourious Bastards* for me. I think all of the stories interweave really well together. I think that his writing is at its strongest, arguably, with a lot of really well fleshed out characters, even for the minimal time they're on screen. No problems, honestly, as a filmmaker. Just flawless filmmaking here.
Of course, yes, very humble man. Usually likes to keep to himself with all of his opinions in his personal life. But I believe this was the second Tarantino film I've watched. I saw Django when it came out at home, and then I was like, I kind of want to see more films by this. And just like what Melbourne said, I would say this is probably my one or two with *Inglourious Bastards* for being my favorite. I think most people know about Pulp Fiction. Most people know why it's so great. So very funny experience for when I first watched this movie. I watched it with my dad on a Sunday afternoon. And I'd say about midway through, my grandmother came over and decided that she needed to take a nap. And she didn't have time to drive home. So she just decided to take a nap in my house. And we were like, okay, we just got to kind of turn it down and put on the closed captioning. No big deal. I watch movies with closed captioning now. It's all fine. Then we got to the GIMP scene. And if that scene is uncomfortable without the closed captioning, don't watch that scene with the closed captioning because, oh boy, you will want to throw up. I eventually watched the movie in much different circumstances, and it has grown to be one of my personal favorites. But yes, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with Pulp Fiction and with Quentin Tarantino, Mr. Hot Scarby.
Of course.
What is the next filmmaker on our list, Melbourne?
The Coen brothers.
The Coen brothers. Yes, I will take them. Two brothers from the great state of Minnesota. I'm not talking about Kaleb Koho and his brother. I am, of course, talking about Ethan and Joel Coen, or Joel Coen, as some people know. He was originally credited with he was originally credited with directing the earlier movies and then DGA stuff. Never mind. The film I'm going to be talking about today is "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" That was the first Coen brother film I watched, and I actually watched this one in school. In my freshman year of high school, we had to read part of the Odyssey. And as some people may know, "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" is based off of the Odyssey, but is set in 1930s Depression-era America. And when I first saw it, I was like, I like this, but I'm not sure I love it. And this is one where I revisited the film later after watching other Coen brothers movies, such as Fargo and The Big Lebowski, and I said, I want to revisit this one again. And I think that is when I fully understood why this movie is so great. I love the sepia tone nature of like the filter of this film. I love the acting performances from George Clooney. I think this might be my personal favorite George Clooney performance. All the Odyssey references in this, from the cowarding shot to John Goodman playing a man with one eye, I just think is just absolutely hilarious. Like many Coen Brothers films, I think they're enjoyable on the surface, but I think everyone can kind of find their deeper meaning to this one. And I think the reason why this one is so unique is because the deeper meaning is literally there. It is essentially the Odyssey. And that is part of the reason why I love it. Anyway, Melbourne, what are your thoughts on Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
This is one of my favorite scripts of theirs. I think it's really smart and witty and does condense that massive epic into a decently short runtime really well. However, I do have to stand strongly opposed to it because it did, to an extent, revolutionize visual effects, which is the downfall of modern cinema. So I think a great script was wasted on ruining cinema as an art form.
Yes, that is very much an interesting take. Hot, what are your opinions on Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I enjoyed the movie. It has been quite a while since I've seen it. However, people in this community talking about it with a lot of reverence has made me want to go back and revisit it. My first Coen Brothers experience was with Fargo. I watched it because when I was getting into movies, I really explored a lot of Siskel and Ebert's old reviews on YouTube and stuff like that. And Fargo was one of their most glowing reviews ever for a film. They just could not stop talking about how good it was. And so it made me want to go watch it. And yeah, it's still right up there as one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies. I enjoy quite a few of their movies, and really only dislike a couple of the ones that I've seen. So.
Yeah, I'd say aside from The Lady Killers and Intolerable Cruelty, I don't think there are any two that I really dislike per se, and I do love the majority of them.
I don't like Barton Fink that much, but I know that's controversial.
Ooh, that is a take that we will have for another day. But as always, we will keep it respectful, just like on all film Twitter. Melbourne, what is the next filmmaker we will talk about?
Martin Scorsese.
Yes, Martin Scorsese, one of the true masters of cinema, and I will take this one if you guys don't mind. The first Scorsese film I watched was a little film by the name of Taxi Driver. The second collaboration between Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. And this is one of the true... I just love when a movie can get this atmospheric in such a dirty way, where you could be watching this movie in the nicest scenario you can, and you will feel gross. This was filmed during a garbage strike in New York, and you could tell from how hazy it is. I love the saxophone score. Travis Bickle, one of the more iconic characters. One Mr. Kaleb Boatman would like me to mention that he is in the film, or at least his spirit, Albert Brooks. I believe his first performance, and he is actually very, very good. But yeah, I really do love this film. The character Travis Bickle, I think why it works so well is because I could tell that Martin Scorsese realizes that Travis is a horrible human being, but you're still just following him through life. And it can honestly even get funny at points. Like, I still go back to the scene where Travis is talking with the Secret Service agent. That movie has me laughing out loud with how awkward it is. But yeah, I really do just love how gritty and just down on the floor this movie feels. And yeah, I absolutely love it. And it made Scorsese one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. Hot, what are your takes on Taxi Driver?
Yes, I would just first like to say that your take that Martin Scorsese really does show you what a terrible person Travis is obviously universally shared by everyone on Twitter.
Yes.
No one has ever misunderstood any of his films to be glamorizing, for example, the behavior that is in the film.
Especially not Todd Phillips in any way.
Just offering an example. Again, no one has ever said this, just spitballing here. But Taxi Driver, excellent film. As with some Scorsese films like this and Raging Bull, although I think it's technically a masterpiece, it's not something that I enjoy rewatching that much because it's very dark. It is pretty depressing. It does take a particular worldview that is often hard to just keep you coming back for. But other Scorsese films, certainly, I love revisiting, including the one that was my first one, which was The Departed, another movie that I saw on TV. I had to see the TV edit, and then when I saw the real thing, it was stark differences. But Definitely still one of his best, and a masterful director for sure. Although, yeah, again, like I said, some of his films are more rewatchable than others for me.
Understandable, yes. Departed, a fan favorite in this community, maybe a bit too much of a fan favorite, but you never know. Melbourne,
Yeah, I don't disagree with
what
that.
do you have to say? Yeah.
I'm glad we can actually finally talk about classic cinema today. Scorsese's maybe his best effort, This and Mean Streets, are right next to each other. As well as Hugo, surprisingly enough. I love Méliès in that, but no, this is I personally really love Jodie Foster in this film. I think she gives a electric performance, especially at such a young age. I think she creates a really well realized character. Travis Bickle, yeah, one of our great anti-heroes in classic cinema. I'm very glad to be able to talk about him to some extent today. But overall, I adore everything that's happened in the film. And Scorsese has gone down a little bit as a filmmaker since then. Again, adhering to like his Wolf of Wall Streets, thinking just flashing lights and hard edits are great. This is just slow and tense. And even himself in the film, every bit of this just works.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for that opinion. Melbourne, who is the next filmmaker on our list?
It is the Wes Anderson, not the PT or the WS.
Understandable. Some might say the superior Anderson. Some are correct. Melbourne, why don't you speak about what was your first film from Wes Anderson?
My first film of his, I grew up just truly loving, like the original coming of age film, The 500 Blows. So I said, okay, let me see what this promising director could do with that. And I watched Moonrise Kingdom, which I think captures the childish wonder of first love amazingly well. And I am just excited that that he was able to do something really heartwarming with all of that. And his career, not something I've been a huge fan of, but I think this film is truly an ode to classic cinema in all the best ways.
Absolutely. Yes, Moonrise Kingdom is one that I've been needing to revisit. I've seen it once. I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite Wes Anderson film. I think it kind of gets a little too quirky. I think Wes Anderson dives a little too deep into his sensibilities as a filmmaker, but overall, I do really enjoy Wes Anderson as a filmmaker, and I do like this film. Hot, what do you have to say about Moonrise Kingdom?
This is my favorite of his films. I think in agreement with Melbourne there that this movie's excellent. I think his sensibility works really well in the coming of age and summer camp, like small town type setting that this movie takes place in. I think is really well suited to the type of stylistic filmmaker that he is. I am hot and cold on his movies. There are some that I really like this one, and there are some which have never quite connected for me. But I do find him a very interesting filmmaker, and always look forward to his movies because like a lot of the directors we've talked about, no one else makes a movie like him. You can instantly recognize it. The first one that I ever saw was The Fantastic Mr. Fox in theaters. I didn't really know anything about Wes Anderson, and it was kind of shell shock for me coming out of the movie, like, what in the world was that? Like, I've never seen anything like that. But over the years, obviously, I've become more accustomed to his style, and I find it mostly endearing now. Although, again, not every film works for me.
Yes, Fantastic Mr. Fox is one that I personally really love. But I believe we have reached the final filmmaker on our list, and if I am not mistaken, I believe that one is Edgar Wright, which Melbourne will once again be talking about their first experience with.
Unfortunately, a director I'm not a huge fan of. I think he's a little pedantic. But I'm going to start with a film that I think, again, is his first foray, Shaun of the Dead, I think is a great evolution of the zombie genre. It's no White Zombie or even Night of the Living Dead. But I think it evolves the zombie mythos in an interesting way, taking them back to not quite their roots, something we know more from like the 50s, 60s era of horror, of just slow, methodical, and an encroaching sign of death, if you were. Comedy doesn't entirely work for me. I think the Brits were at their best in the 70s and now have sort of lost their touch. Simon Pegg is an amazing actor, and I think he offers a lot as a performer. Everything else in the film just sort of loses its way, though, and I don't think Wright has ever really performed well as a director since this.
Interesting. Hot, what say you about Shaun of the Dead?
Well, that is indeed a hot take that he has not performed well since then. But uh, I enjoy this film. I enjoy all of Mr. Wright's films. I don't know if there's one that I love. Maybe until this year, there could be two that I love. But I think what he's able to do with the filmmaker, I find as a filmmaker, I find really engaging the way that he is able to make something that is a genre film. Like, he makes genre movies, he makes mainstream movies, but they also have sort of like the specificity about them that really speaks to people like us who are more serious consumers of cinema, I guess you could say, and are more in tune with the sort of references and um, styles that he is um, capturing in his movies. And so I think he really gets the best of both worlds and is really able to appeal to both cinephiles and the general moviegoer with everything that he does. And he's constantly mixing it up. I mean, he's going to be making this year, he's made a music documentary already. He's going to be making a horror film as well with Last Night in Soho. So um, he's a very interesting director. I guess Shaun of the Dead's a little bit of a horror film, but it's more of a comedy, of course. And I enjoy it.
Yes, thank you, Scott. Hot. I'm also very, very excited for Last Night in Soho, but I also believe Shaun of the Dead was the first Edgar Wright film I saw, and I absolutely loved it. This is my personal favorite type of British comedy. It's dry, but it's also eclectic in a way. Like, it does keep the energy up, and something I do love about this movie, and something I love about Edgar Wright movies as a whole, just like Wes Anderson, is when you watch these movies, there is no doubt that no one else is making this movie except for Edgar Wright. Like, he very much has a vision. He has an energy, he has a style that he keeps to. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is another film that I personally love, and once again, a movie that no one has ever misinterpreted the protagonist of that film. Like no one's ever taken like the wrong idea from that film. But yes, I also really, really do love Shaun of the Dead. So thank you, Melbourne. And now we are going to be moving on to the last portion of our show, where we are going to be talking about the movie of the week, or movie of the month, that being, of course, Glenn Ross. And because it is Tweeted It, we are going to describe a tweet that we would make about the trailer for this film that would hopefully get us a lot of reactions, regardless of good or bad. It does not matter. It's film Twitter. We all love to get reactions. I will go first, if you guys wouldn't mind.
No, go right ahead.
My reaction would be, wow, so this movie is just a bunch of guys sitting around tables talking? Wow, that can't make for an interesting film. I'm sure everyone will very much respect to that. Will very much
electric.
React reasonably to that take. I think that's a very non-biased take. Because I think, as we all know, we all want a little bit more energy in our films, and no one just likes characters just talking. Like, that doesn't sell a movie. Melbourne, why didn't you explain what your tweet would be?
I could not disagree with you more. Mine will just be a long thread about how I think James Foley is an underwhelming director, and how this should have been directed by Sidney Lumet, one of the great auteurs of the 1970s.
Yes. Thank you. And Hot, what would you say in your tweet?
If you'll allow me the floor for a moment, I have prepared several tweets in what I would like to consider the 5 people that you will encounter on film Twitter. I would like to speak about what each of them might think about this trailer. Okay?
Thank you.
The first individual, this is the person who interprets everything through a political lens and tries to relate everything to politics. They would say, Alec Baldwin said he would move to Canada if George W. Bush got elected. Not only did he not do it, he's now playing Donald J. Trump from The Apprentice in a new movie. You either die a hero or ... That's the first individual.
That's really good.
Second of all, this would be what I would like to call the worst person that you will ever meet on film Twitter. Oh, good, another movie about white male aggression in which an Italian-American actor says the phrase, "You talking to me?" And there are no women in it? Are we sure you know who didn't direct this? Hashtag Bechtel fail. The third individual is someone I like to call the person who puts out tweets that are not all that clever or funny, and they get 30,000 likes and 10,000 retweets. Their tweet on this trailer would be, "Were Glengarry, Glen Ross, and Rachel on a break?" And finally, actually, I'm sorry, there are two more. This would be the person that I was speaking about earlier, the person who goes to all of the early MCU screenings. This is what they would say. "As I tweeted when I saw this at Sundance, people are going to, all caps, lose their minds for Glengarry Glen Ross. It is like the ancient myth of Orpheus and Eurydice meets Reservoir Dogs. Give Jack Lemmon the Oscar now." And finally, the final person who you will encounter on Twitter is very simply summed up as Jeff Snyder. And what they would say about this movie is, "For my review of Glengarry Glen Ross, please sign up for In Snyder Plus. $20 a month. What are you guys waiting for?" Thank you.
And with
There
that,
you go. The 5 people that you meet on Film Twitter.
that was the most beautiful thing I could have asked to wrap this up. I'm so happy we closed with Hot Scarvy. Thank you, everyone, for coming out to Tweet It tonight on this week of Multiplex at the Multiverse. I am Payson Redshaw.
I'm Melbourne.
And I am Hot Scarvy. Follow me at ScarvyDent on Twitter.
Yes, of course. Follow me at the Cinemaster on Twitter.
You know where I am.
Have a good night, everyone.
In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening.